Hi everyone, welcome. I can see that a few people are still on their way in, but I thought we would get started because we've got a lot of really interesting panelists today, and I want to hear from all of them. So hi everyone, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us at this Making Greener Creative Choices webinar. My name is Uella Jackson. I'm a filmmaker and presenter based in Bristol, and I do a whole load of work around storytelling and supporting underrepresented creatives to take up space in the culture and creative industries. I really believe in using culture and creativity as a way to create social change. So this feels like a really apt session today. I also want to thank BFI Sustainable Screen Fund, supported by National Lottery, for making this session possible. So just a little bit of context. So in December last year, BAFTA, Albert, and industry partners launched Spark, the film and TV's industry's roadmap to clean temporary power by 2030. Now, Spark sets out a practical and collaborative plan to transition our industry away from fossil fuel generators and towards more alternative solutions without compromising creativity or production quality, which is what we're all going to be talking about today. So the need for Spark couldn't be clearer, and I hope it's very obvious to us now, but we just want to get this out there just so that it's iterated. So in 2024, UK productions burned over 3 million litres of fossil fuels in generators, right? 3 million. And more than half of productions relied almost entirely on fossil fuels. So we definitely want to try and change that. A statement of intent to reduce this has been signed with quite a few key industry players. You've got obviously our lovely people at BAFTA Albert, BBC, Channel 4, you've got BFI, and you've also got streaming services like Netflix, Sky, etc., who are signing up, and we've got more signing up. So that feels really positive. But let's talk about kind of on the ground, like the people that are kind of making the work and doing the work. So today we have an awesome panel to discuss how the new generation of cleaner power and lower energy kit might influence our creative choices, and what could that mean for the way that our films and TV looks and feels, right? Because I feel like this is something that is really exciting, and we have an opportunity here to do things differently. So we've got some gaffers here, we've got some DOPs, directors of photography. We've also got a sustainability and power planning consultant. So I'm gonna hand over to them to introduce themselves. So Carolina, can I hand over to you to introduce yourself?
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me? Yes. Cool. Yeah. Hi. I'm Carolina. I'm a gaffer, and so yes, we in COVID times we had a bit of a mission going, focusing our energy or time on on sustainability in the
Awesome.
film industry and working, like a grassroots movement, and so that was kind of my way into becoming a bit more, conscious. And that was, yeah, again, 6 years ago now. Um, so I've been a gaffer for, like, I don't know, 25 years or so. And yeah, so I've been around for a bit. And so my main work at the moment is feature films of a kind of medium budget
Mm,
range, and
yeah.
but also TV, and then filling the gaps at the moment with commercials.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. And it's great to hear you have such a long career. So you can tell us a bit later about how you've seen the changes, particularly in the kind of in terms of kit and also the kind of creative things that we're seeing on screen. I also want to hand over to our other gaffer, Andy. Do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Andy Lowe. I'm a gaffer based in London, and very similar to Carolina, actually. I've been about 25 years in the industry
Wow.
as well, and yeah, mainly sort of features and TV shows nowadays. And yeah, the same as what you were just saying to Carolina, really, I can definitely talk about the transition of changes that have happened in those 25 years, because there's been some quite big, yeah, technological changes that have happened. Yeah, we'd be more than happy to talk about.
Thank you so much, Andy. Yeah, I definitely want to get into that with you. We've got some DOPs as well. So we've got Anna and Sarah. Would either of you like to go first and introducing yourself?
Mm.
Oh, oh, hey, Sarah.
Hi, yeah, so yes, I'm a director of photography, mainly working in independent feature film. I trained in France and I've been in the UK for about 10 years. I've been in the business probably for about 15-ish years. And what Carolina alluded to, the kind of work we did in COVID, Carolina and Anna and I and some others basically really set to brainstorming how we as crew could vocalize to production how we actively wanted to change, because the big thing that we perceived at the time was that decisions get made in a top-down way, and often there's a lack of communication about what is personally, morally a priority for individuals. And so we wanted to kind of find a ways of kickstarting that conversation where producers didn't feel like they were asking us an inconvenience, but we were saying, actually, we also really want to do things in a different way. And we each have our expertise to bring. And it was called Cut It. It is called Cut It. It's just dormant. We all got busy.
Hey, cut it or long live cut it. Thank you so much. Over to Anna.
Hi there. Yeah, my name's Anna Valdez Hanks. I'm a DOP. I began as a camera assistant and worked up to become a DOP, and I've been doing this role for I think about 10 years now. I primarily work in television at different ranges from sort of band 2 up to band 4, plus occasional artist films and feature films. I had a sort of environmental awakening in 2019 when I was pregnant, and it was at the same time as there was a kind of the Extinction Rebellion uprising, and we all suddenly started looking around and realizing that hadn't been paying enough attention to these matters. And then, as Sarah said, COVID, and Caroline said COVID hit, and we formed this organization. We worked extremely hard. We did a lot of research. We came up with a lot of ideas. And then I think the journey for me since then has been trying to take some of those ideas onto set, sometimes, with success and sometimes without the success that I would have hoped. And it's been really interesting kind of testing out the ideas that we were talking about in a real world setting. And I'm still on that journey, I'd say.
Well, that's good because I think a lot of the people who are in this webinar are also either at the beginning or in the midst, like weeding their way through this journey. So it would be great to hear your experience. And I'm going to hand over to Steve, who's a sustainability and power planning consultant at Creative Zero. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Shirley. Hi, everyone. Yeah, as we just said, I'm a clean power consultant with Creative Zero. I work with productions and directly with broadcast and streamers across ideally all departments. Creative Zero were authors with Film London of the Fuel Project, and we're currently working on the Fuel Project Phase 3. Prior to this, I've been in camera and lighting rental most of my life, and my last position was MD at Pixie Pixel. And Pixie Pixel, we were the first UK lighting company to go HPO exclusively, and we launched a hybrid generator to the market back in 2022.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So as you can see, we've got an incredible panel and a lot of experience and varying experience. I think before we get into it, I think I want to just stress that we've chosen these panelists with varying experience levels when it comes to cleaner energy and lower power kit, and how we're personally and professionally coming at these issues. So hopefully our discussion will bring out some of the questions, dilemmas and anxieties that our audience may have. Like Sarah, when you were mentioning about producers kind of coming to crew with maybe feeling like it's an inconvenience. I definitely can recognize that in myself of like going through BAFTA Albert's like sustainable production and being like, hey, going up to gaffers and be like, hey, is it possible for us to do XYZ? And I think this feels really, really like a great time. So I was gonna just say I would love to just do a quick exercise of like, and also if you're in the audience as well, I'd love for you to do this personally, just on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being like I just got here, I don't know what the heck is going on, and 10 being like I am Spark 2030 in human form. Where would you all say that you are in your kind of journey? And I also am keen to hear some of the tensions around the balance between, obviously you're not working in isolation, you're working with crews, you're working with producers within an industry. How far do you feel you are, scale of 0 to 10? Yeah, Sarah.
Sorry, do you mean as in our knowledge, or like how like how far we're succeeding in implementing? What is this exactly? Like
Yeah.
how on
Well,
top of it we feel
yeah, I think
theoretically
I
or
think
practically?
I think practically, because I think a lot of people in our, well, actually, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I do think that there is a tension between, we know that there are these issues and we have a certain amount of knowledge to be able to act, but actually being able to act is maybe a barrier for people. Carolina, you unmuted. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
Well, instinctively, I would have said 6.
Good.
Because there's lots more to go to, but I think I'm beyond the halfway.
Amazing. Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in with their number? And this is obviously a no judgment zone.
Yeah, I thought I was going to say like I probably would settle on 6 as well because I feel like I wanted to go like, yeah, I'm an 8. I'm like this, like, everything I do is sustainable, but that's where I want to be.
Mm,
But I think, yeah, I'll probably say past halfway, but not. I don't know. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes I guess what you're saying as well. Like the industry almost is the thing that's sort of holding things back a little. Like I think everybody wants to get further and do more, but we're a little bit maybe not reticent, but there's like always like a bit of a safety or like like things like you've got to complete the schedule of a day, and you can only do things that mean you complete the day. Like you can't like go over schedule because of, for any reason really, but it wouldn't really suffice or would be allowed. You couldn't say, oh, well, but we tried to do things sustainably, but we didn't complete the day. Like you have to sort of default back into like what works. So I think it's more of a slower journey, like small steps, baby steps forwards. But yeah, I reckon I'm facing forwards, but still somewhere around a 6.
nice. Thank you so much for that, Andy. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I
I
think
would say I am sorry to, I would say I'm probably around a 5 or a 6 in that although I've had very good intentions, sometimes I've felt that I've sort of butted up against either the practical realities or the desire to have the need to persuade everybody around me of, not the need to not have a generator on a particular job, but use local power and volt stacks and things like that, and being sometimes unable to persuade the gaffers I was working with that we could do that. Or in other cases, I was filming in a big derelict house. There was no energy anywhere nearby, and it was a big house, so we needed bigger lights. So that was the first thing I did after cut it, and that was quite disparaging. So there's a I feel like I've often butting up against the realities, but trying hard and finding areas that I can improve on, like mainly transport and things like that, like not flying crew around. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think from a knowledge base, it's a bit tricky because I've been involved in the Spark 2030 documentation. So, but I think, like Anna was just saying, and Andy, it's actually, you've still got to get the job done, and you may have to persuade certain people about different decisions. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and also about people not using cleaner kit yet. got the experience of it.
I was going to say three. A three essentially was for my good intentions and my aspiration, but my ability to enact change is, yeah. I mean, that it's there's a whole discussion to be had of at what point do we measure the carbon footprint? Do we do we talk about, do we purely concentrate on power used on set? Do we talk about inbuilt carbon footprint into the materials of the kit we're using? It's kind of an endless scale that expands. But yeah, one of my sort of big beefs, I think, is that because we're an industry that has service industries creating kit and who respond to the concept of innovation, we have this sort of frenzy of creating more and more LED lights and a kind of overproduction of new kit, when actually we need to be thinking about maintaining, repairing a modular kit, because load and load LED lighting in a dump is definitely going to be less sustainable than an old, well-maintained tungsten light.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I have good intentions. I just don't feel like I have the traction to enact stuff.
Well, Sarah, I will say that I'm going to join you in the three crew. So you're not by yourself, and thank you for highlighting some of the tensions there. I wanted to talk to Carolina and Andy about some of the considerations. I know Sarah's brought up around LED lights, but like in the strategy, that it feels like a really positive space to be in. What are some of the key considerations for you guys when you're on set around using LEDs, and why might you use them as opposed to using something else?
Yeah, I think, and that kind of links in with what Sarah was saying, actually. I think we shouldn't concentrate only on LED. I think it's a bit, it's a bit of a trap, because as Sarah rightly said, and I think we talked about that with Andy early on as well, there's so many LED lights out there now, and they started with soft panels, and that's definitely a way there. But the directional light, I think HMIs are not to disregard, because they're still lower energy than tungsten, for example, for the output that you're getting. And so there's other solutions, and I think we can be falling into that trap of everything new is greener or whatever, which is not true. But at the same time, also looking positive onto these challenges that we have, and in addition to other challenges of less time for production and less money for productions, etc. No, it's an extra challenge to look from the green side and have restrictions there. But yeah, so there is, yeah, I don't know if I'm answering that question now, really. I'm a bit of a tangent there. But so basically, don't disregard the old lamps to be used, and reused again. That's to me, that's part of the green challenge as well.
I think you're highlighting a really interesting tension there, and also an opportunity. Like, I think that there's a lot of like creative problem solving that, obviously being in the creative industries, being part of crew, you're always making these decisions that are creative in the sense of like, maybe there's a challenge, maybe there's something that you need to get around, and what is the best thing to do in that scenario. But then thinking about what the creative, in terms of the output, what you get from using maybe different lights, and what the different effects are. I'm wondering if any of our DOPs could talk to us a little bit about what you're thinking about, like when you're trying to communicate a vision, and whether there's opportunity there for you to work well with gaffers around more sustainable choices.
I would say that I think the points about the this endless proliferation of new LED lights on the market is valid, and I get quite confused sometimes about, I love a shiny new toy, and I'm excited to see what these new, especially more directional LEDs can do. And I think it's fair to say that life under LED has just become so fluid and so quick and so delightful in many ways. The changing the colors, like, very quickly, and it's a very nice flexible way to work, and you can do a lot with LEDs. And I had some good experiences trying to replace some HMIs with some sort of more directional LEDs, which I felt I was able to do under some circumstances, putting them outside windows and getting a nice backlight and things. So I think the first thing you do as a creative when you get a script and you meet with the director is you define the vision, and you look at references, and you talk, and you look at images, and then you take it from there. So first you have the vision and the look that you want to achieve, and then you work out how to achieve it. So I suppose the place I would go to would be to see how much I can achieve with LEDs from a sustainable point of view, because the more you can lean on LEDs, particularly on a project that is on location, the more you can lean on LEDs, the more you can slim down or even eliminate your generator use, which is really exciting. And it's exciting in lots of ways. You can go off local power, you have less trucks, hanging around. So yeah, I've been able to do that a bit, and that's been great. But if there was a situation where creatively that wasn't tenable, then you have to think again. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And Sarah, do you want to jump in? I'm all
yeah, just to sort of add to that, it's sort of often a given that we all love tungsten. We all love the kind of light that tungsten creates. And I am in that camp, and I have never quite understood why. Couldn't quite parse why. And I would recommend, hopefully it should be up on the British Society of Cinematographers website now, but at the BSC Expo this year, Tim King did a seminar called Light and Colour for Aperture. And he really went through why LEDs were initially limited in their color spectrum when they first came out, why there was often this greenish tinge, and then how they have improved. And essentially, the improvement being to try and emulate the full color space that we have in tungsten. And obviously, if we have a full color space, then objects in the world will react naturally, as the eye sees. Whereas if you don't have the full color space, something you're putting on the object, you're not going to be able to see it how you would want to see it in a daylight setting or whatever it is. But so that was actually helpful to me to understand kind of why I always gravitated, even if I physically or financially or whatever couldn't, to tungsten. And kind of help me understand what it is that improvement in LED technology is trying to do. But yeah, but then on the sort of flip side, as I think some people have said, the making the day is the really important thing in production. We have shorter schedules, and it's the nimbleness and the agility that LED gives, which is incredibly precious. I would say, it's probably quite difficult to find people saying they actively prefer LED light if they had in a kind of ideal setting the choice between tungsten and LED. But in terms of the physical requirements of lighting a scene and making it happen, LED. And then, of course, like with that, it's not just the lights and putting them in place, but it's, yeah, where are we getting the power from? How much power needs to be consumed? And of course, you know, the ability to be battery powered, like it only kind of heightens the nimbleness. And then there's the whole conversation to be had, I think, about generators slash plugging into mains power, because mains plugging into mains power, you know, what is more sustainable? Is it an LED with all the kind of inbuilt carbon footprint of the precious minerals, the kind of what its life cycle will be, if it's going off a diesel powered generator versus an old tungsten light that has seen many shoots, that is plugged into mains power and the power source is renewable? Obviously, it's just really difficult because it's an onion, because there are so many layers to this.
Yeah.
And this is why it's really difficult for people to act in isolation, and probably why I said three, because I like within my sphere of influence, it's quite difficult to like make sure all those layers are ticked.
Yeah. And I'm quite interested in that, you know, the isolation thing. And I would like to bring everyone into this, including you, Steve, because we haven't heard from you yet. But I'm intrigued, like, where are, you know, in terms of like, obviously you're working with directors, you're working with producers, like, are they having the conversations with you? Is that something that, you know, is this something that you're doing, that kind of um almost that decision matrix alone? Or are there types of crew that are having the conversations? Is there certain professions that are more into, obviously gaffers and DOPs are going to be more, but I'm just quite interested in where we're seeing the most appetite for this.
I think, I mean, the power determination is, you know, the broadcasters and streamers are issuing statements and power planning stuff, but it's, as Sarah was just saying, it's really hard to understand. But just to get into that sort of power side, if you are using grid versus a fossil or HVO fuel is 5 times cheaper. So from a creative perspective, you might have some more money to put somewhere else if you're using grid and if you do tie into the grid. But and then if we come to the batteries, I think batteries are helping, certainly electricians, lighting gaffers and stuff. It's quicker for them to run down the street with a battery, not run down the street, and just plug a sky panel on with an Instagrid, and then you haven't got to run cable all the way down the street. So that's quicker. And obviously it's a battery, so it might run out of power, so you've got to do a calculation. But just, you know, different crews have different experiences, and it is about people's comfort. About, you know, a battery is like an EV. It's, people have a range anxiety. So there's not, you know, I think lighting crews have adopted Instagrids, they've adopted Wattmans, they're all on all the trucks. They've not really adopted bigger batteries like the Ally battery or Hush Pods. We're seeing them in locations teams. They're towing around bigger batteries. That's happening. Facilities, they're all hybridized now, or most of them. They're getting there. And lighting generators are starting to be hybridized, but it's quite early days for the lighting to be running, or from what I've seen, to be running exclusively on batteries. I was on set 2 weeks ago, and there was a whole set and it was powered by 8 different Hush Pods all dotted around the set. And this was a unit manager who just didn't want to use diesel generators. He didn't think it was fair on the residents. It wasn't a sustainability remit. He just said, look, we can do this. I'll take it on the chin. It's going to work. And he had 5 or 6 different Hush Pods all within the set. Lighting used it, craft used it, video village used it. And he had a recharge set up. So you can see it. It's getting there, but it's early days of lighting.
Thank you so much for that, Steve. And it's great to hear that, you know, plugging into the grid is so much more cost efficient as well, because that is part of the decision making as well, isn't it? It's not just about sustainability as much as it probably is for us. I wanted to pick up on your point around, you know, like running cables down and etc. Like, what are some of the other, I guess, the benefits or the things that you see when people are moving to more cleaner power on location? How does that affect the look and feel of a film or even the environment on set?
I think the environment on set is, that's much better for everyone. It's quieter. There is no fuel. Creatively, I'm probably going to defer that question to the others on the panel, because that's probably their speciality rather than mine. Yeah.
Anyone want to jump in?
Well, I suppose I just would say, like, with nimbleness, I suppose you can reserve the right to refine and alter, so, like, obviously we have control desks or like just on an iPad, like for the lighting. So it's no longer a question of somebody getting a ladder, going up, turning a dial. So so you can kind of stir the pot and find it as you're doing it. You don't get a baked in commitment to, okay, I'm going to be this color with this gel, and that we're going to put that on every light. So, like, it definitely does free up a creativity and a sort of spontaneity to be able to respond. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate. Like, obviously, like, everything is planned and prepped, and it doesn't mean you can change everything, but certainly in light intensity, like color temperature, which lights you're turning completely on or off. Like, yeah, you can pre-rig and then have it all at your fingertips.
Yeah.
And I would say that, I mean, from my perspective, I think LEDs have just been wonderful for creativity because of the ease of changing color, and the just lots of different reasons. The speed of getting another light in when you might need it, just whatever you got. Also, if you want soft sources, previously you'd have to do, you have to bring it up to kind of construct all these things on set to make that work. Whereas now you can just either get, just get a big faced LED light and just put it in the set, or even, a sort of fabric one that you put onto the wall. I mean, it's just, I think it's incredibly creatively freeing. There's just the occasional limitation, or depending on the job you're in, it might be a common limitation of needing a bigger source, a harder source that you're butting up against the LED capabilities. But say in every other way, it's more creatively fulfilling to my mind, for me.
I love that. I love that idea of us being creatively fulfilled. Carolina.
Yeah, I think I've got another example where, coming from the other way around. So I started using reflected light system with parallel beam light. Around, I think 2019 or 20. So maybe it was during COVID. Can't quite remember. But anyway, so there was a light and the quality of light that was astonishing, and to make it look like sunlight naturally coming through the window, and that was, a parallel beam light, which was an HMI 1.2 kilowatt, and the output is comparable with a 6K or even 9K HMI in certain circumstances. And so then we, after discovering the quality being so daylight, natural, having that natural quality, and then we realized, all right, so we're also like saving a quarter of the power that we would need with a different light, different HMI. So that was, and now I go out and say, okay, it's energy saving, but actually the original idea came from discovering this light, which we then used, and we used it, started a production having this light in mind for this particular film. So there was a creative solution, and then the realization is actually energy saving, and and so that's compared to directional LEDs. I did a shoot out recently. LED directional lights were not giving as much output as that parallel beam light.
Yeah, and I think this is what I'm really finding fascinating from this conversation is that it feels like there are these kind of imperfect compromises that we're trying to make as we navigate around these decisions. But sometimes when you hit it, you get the kind of creative outlook that you want or what the director's vision, etc. But then there's also whether it's cost saving or energy saving, which feels like it's two almost threefold. I'm quite interested in hearing, and I just also want to point out to the audience if you've got questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat and we can try and get to them shortly. But whether it's, whether we're talking about lighting or clean temporary power solutions, do you have any tips or lessons that you can share that just feel like, well, off of Carolina's point, that feel like wins or things that you would share with others in your industry who might be at the zero of that scale of 0 to 10, or maybe someone who is also at the 9 stage?
Well, I mean, this is something that Anna and Carolina and I have talked about quite a lot, and it's pretty obvious, but essential. And what I don't quite know is how we can change this industry's attitude to this particular thing, which is planning. Because if everyone knows what they are doing, then they can plan accordingly and not over anticipate and over order. And so yeah, it just feels like I know it's a big ask for an industry where like traditionally we rarely have the amount of prep we'd want, and then there's a kind of reacting in real timeness, which is essential and will kind of always be part of it. But there is also a kind of equivalence to be found, I think. Like, but I think it's a sort of thing. It really requires a kind of stepping back and a systemic way of thinking about things. It's not. It cannot be just a question of, oh, we'd quite like to improve things. I think we have to say to ourselves, the priority is to turn this around and make environment a priority. If we don't recognize that as a priority, then our changes will always be very incremental and cosmetic, and they won't initiate interdepartmental conversations or conversations significantly in advance to actually be able to implement change. So, like for example, like on a feature film I did about 2 years ago, like I did, after a lot of pestering, manage to get a green memo meeting before we went into production. But when did that happen? The night before our first shooting day. And it was an opportunity for all the departments, anyone who was interested, to come and say like how we do stuff. But you can't make decisions about where your power is going to come from at that point. So I feel like for me this is the key thing, both in terms of the communication between the departments, the registering that this is an absolute priority, and that they like essentially kind of disallowing yourself wiggle room from that being a priority, and that means it all has to happen way earlier. And if we're going to have things like sustainability advisors, then they need to have power and they need to be there from the beginning. And I had another point with that as well, but I can't remember what it was now. No, I can't remember.
Well,
Can I
really
jump
well.
in on
Yeah.
that?
Over to you, Steve. Yeah.
Just because I was just to say what Sarah's saying, and this is that it's almost the biggest win that we've found is having a clean power planning meeting with all HODs as early as possible, and it just sets the tone. If it is a clean power meeting, and then you're just from the start, this is not 2 days before the recce. This is a couple of weeks before that, so it just sets the tone that this is what we're trying to achieve. And you don't know all the locations and you don't know what the power setup is yet, But if everyone's thinking that clean power is something that we want to be doing, if the line producer puts a line in their budget which says clean power and just takes some budgets and just then there's a line that says clean power. Oh, what should we put in this? It just gets the thought process going. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I love that. Thank you, Steve. And also hearing you both speak has made me think of like you know, access riders and the way in which artists and creatives and are starting to have these documents that are like, if you work with me, this is what you will expect, or this is what I need from you. And I think there is a lot of leverage that the crew can have in terms of being like, this is how I like to work. I like to work in spaces where we're using clean power. And obviously can feel a bit vulnerable, particularly as there's volatility around the sector. But I think the more of us that are doing it, it feels like it puts that stance out there and puts it in the forefront of people's minds. Has anyone else got any tips or thoughts that they want to throw out?
I just wondered, and like, I don't know if Anna, if you want to talk about, because it's like the Green Rider that we were working on that responds
Yes,
quite clearly to that.
Yeah, I just first wanted to say that I think the idea of holding a Green Power meeting is very good, because I think a general green meeting is not, it is a useful thing to do, but I think that those things can get sidetracked into things like talking about plastic bottles, which are actually quite a minimal issue compared to everything else on our sets. So I think it's actually a great idea because you need to talk. It's basically a collaboration between locations and the electrical department primarily, isn't it? Clean power, and yeah, to kind of have those conversations that are focused on that seems really smart, and I'm going to take that tip forwards. Yeah, I think I say just striving for what you think you should have, even if you're in a situation where it's not possible, just still having those conversations, because I think even if it doesn't happen on that job, the fact that it's something that's been brought up, well, it just increases awareness. And even around things like explicitly saying I want to take crew from this area because of this reason, I think it's just increases consciousness bit by bit. Even if you don't always feel you're winning, I think those conversations are really important. And the Green Rider was an initiative that we brought forward with Cut It, which was we sort of took all the research that we'd done, and obviously a lot of most of the research that Albert had done that we'd ingested, and made this legal document which could have been an add-on onto the pact agreement, so that when producers download a kind of template agreement, there'd be this green rider at the end that they would have to actively delete if they didn't want to use it. So they wouldn't be forced to use it, but they would have the opportunity to use it. And yeah, there was a lot of the Green Rider covered all the elements of the shoot, things like catering, meat-free days, or rather, I can't actually remember all the elements of that rider now. there was quite a lot in it, and we didn't manage to get it taken up by Pact in the end. But I think it was a great initiative, and it's something that one could do, is talk about having a green rider in one's contract.
Yeah, because it kind of responds to what you were saying, the kind of difficulty as a freelancer of kind of stating your ground like that is quite delicate. But if you were to have like a template thing which is quite normalized, then you are divested of the responsibility, and so it feels it's just normalized, isn't it? If there's a kind of so I think there are ways basically to empower freelancers to be able to say this, but it does require sort of cohesiveness, doesn't it?
Sure. Andy, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking about like we work sort of with restrictions all the time, and I think whether that's like the budget is one restriction, and like the schedule and time, or like for gaffers and DOPs, like daylight might be a restriction, and like we're used to like problem solving with restrictions, and then we sort of almost use those creatively to like come up with ideas of like, how are we going to do this, we could do this and this, and we kind of like come up with different ways that get you through the day, or get you like to do good lighting on that day. And like I think maybe sometimes like the sustainability stuff can at the minute feels a bit like a restriction that we're really butting up against. But I think there's probably something that this is more of a, if it can be turned into a restriction, just like the other restrictions, and go like, yeah, this is what we're we're trying to achieve, and this is just one of the restrictions, another restriction that we're putting on ourselves in a creative way, because from those restrictions comes more creativity anyway. And so if you sort of lean into it, it's not something that you should sort of hold you back, I think. And also just thinking, even what's, sometimes you come up against stuff just on the job that you're on, that there is a restriction that, say, like, maybe the line producer can't put that line in the budget that says we will use like HVO, or if there isn't a green energy meeting, then that doesn't mean you sort of have to you just give up. I think sometimes just going with the small wins that you might get for yourself, if it's important to you as a gaffer or as a DOP, just trying to just keep pushing things in that direction is sometimes can be a win in itself. And I think that's maybe going back to like what Anna was just saying about, like, maybe you're not the stuff that you're discussing on the job you're on now. If you don't manage to do those things, don't see that as a sort of a failure. Just having the conversation means that on the next job, there's more likelihood that you will do those things. I've definitely found that with a lot of the stuff, and a lot of the stuff you do in prep even is kind of like sitting down and having the conversation is just showing the mentality of people is kind of changing. And I think that is something that's shifting, is that everybody is sort of moving forwards towards this sustainable filmmaking sort of practice. But sometimes it's just a bit hard to actually put everything you want to do in place on one job, because of all the reasons we've said about the restrictions of the thing, the schedule and having to do the things that to get through the day. So yeah, that's the thought I was kind of having as people were talking as well.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think I was. Yeah, I have some feeling with that positive approach. I think it's not the weight on our shoulders. Oh, we have to find a greener solution, but rather try be encouraged by that. It's another challenge.
I think that's the thing about LED as well. Like, I totally agree with you, Carolina, that there is a bit of maybe like a false idol sort of thing or something, where like LED isn't the solution to sustainable filmmaking. It's like better, and and what it's done is made us all really talk about it. I think that's the biggest shift, because before LED, I don't think we were really having these conversations about tungsten and HMI and generators and things. I think that a big shift, they've sort of coincided with each other, and batteries, and it's LED has opened up all these possibilities in a really good way. And we shouldn't, but doesn't mean we should rely only on LED or only think, oh, we did a job and all we used was LEDs, so aren't we great? A load of LEDs turned on, like on the job I'm on, so quite often they get used as work lights because they're easy to lean on. They don't get hot. They don't burn loads of fuel all the time, but the generator still burns, and like the lights are just left on. Whereas if that was tungsten lights, we would just be turning them off all the time. So there's like this thing, you sort of have to keep checking yourself that, what are you doing? Is it actually sustainable? Because going, we just used LED, but leaving LED lights on as work lights or whatever is not really being sustainable. So I think it's still a conversation, or still a kind of, you got to hold yourself to account a bit with what you're doing with these lights. But yeah, I do think that, I think it's massively opened up this conversation.
Can I ask Andy and Carolina, really, the use of gels, is that it's not gone, is it? But is it really reduced? Like, the whole full kit of gels every time you start a job, has that changed?
Gels? What? I don't know what you're talking about. Not heard of those.
Well, that's good. That's a great thing.
I would say like diffusion. You still use diffusion.
Yeah.
That's that. But colored gels very occasionally. If you're on location, maybe, and you want to there's some practicals that are built into the set or built into the location. But big gels, not so much really.
But as a sustainability trick, because I remember saying this to the BSC, to DOPs, it's in your court to tell your gaffer not to have a full gel kit on the truck, because the lighting company then has to go and buy all these brand new gels. So that always used to happen, and then we'd have 3,000 bowls of gels that we need to get rid of. So has that not ceased, but has it reduced?
Yes, definitely. We're not loading up so much standby gels, definitely, especially the color effects. Yes, but also I think using textiles for diffusion, for example, that has also increased. I mean, yeah. So it's the diffusion is still a lot used on gels, but even that is a bit less now, I think.
And I think that just, what you were saying, Andy, about actually, well, progress is being made, but also the needing to hold that at the same time with that kind of creative, critical thinking. And I think that is something that we don't want to get into into a kind of lazy approach to, as you say, like, oh, we're using LEDs, oh, we're doing this. This means that we're all good. Often it's quite context dependent, and there's a lot of other things that you're juggling, and it feels like well, I'm quite excited for what the creative opportunities are for navigating some of the kind of as I said earlier, those imperfect compromising, like how can we maximize the life that we already have while moving towards lower carbon options. I wanted to just remind you, we've got a couple more minutes, so feel free to pop any questions while we have our incredible panel here. But one of the things I wanted to ask you all is like, what is one thing that you feel that is obtainable in your role that maybe you haven't either put the energy to or haven't been able to, but you feel like actually this is a quick win. This is something that's fairly easy that I can do or work towards is my next kind of thing to tick off my green energy, cleaner energy vibes.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's coming out of this discussion today as well, and from previous discussion about the prep time.
Mm.
I think that's, as Anna as well said earlier on, that something to take away from this. So that, or like Steve said, the clean power meeting. I think that's a great one, and we've done that to a certain degree, but often, like Sarah said, that's happening the night before or something. So yeah, so do that earlier and maybe raise that in in prep time, or even when you get hired with a certain suggestion to say, let's have that early on, because for example, what we, apart from battery generators, etc., a tie-in is also a very good way of using the grid power, and that can be, on recce's already, looked for. Can we tie in there? Can we have, a grid from the road that we can somehow arrange with the council to use that power? So that's something for prep, and that needs to be, again, more than 2 weeks beforehand. Yeah.
I've never done that, Carolina. How does that work? Do you have to liaise with the council? Is that quite easy to do?
That I need to look into
Tie-ins.
that. I haven't done that as such yet. I have heard that from colleagues, but the tie-in that's just the old-fashioned way that we would have done in the past more. That we would check out the fuse board and see, can we have one circuit that we, while filming, we're not using, like the kitchen circuit or something, and tie into and have our 32 amp plug coming out of that, for example.
Interesting.
I think
I
that's
understand in Germany I'm sorry.
No, go on. I was going to say, just to add to that, that's the perfect way to tie in locally, and then you can recharge your batteries from that as well overnight.
Oh yes.
So you can. So that's the sort of stuff I'm looking in broom cupboards for power. Again,
there
like
might
I
be
used
certain
to.
security. I need to flag a little security thing there. Charging things overnight unattended is a certain risk.
Unattended, yeah, that's a risk. Yeah. I know you. Yeah. Sorry, Anna.
I was just going to say, I understand that in Germany, you're virtually not allowed to use the generator. You're only allowed to use one if you can't arrange a kind of, I guess it would be called a tie-in or a connection to the grid, and that the councils would come in and make that connection rather than you bring your own generator. I remember that's something that came up when we
Oh,
looked
really?
at it.
Oh, again, something else I need to look into.
We've all got homework today.
Yeah.
That's certainly the case in Budapest. In Budapest, there's a ring that you're not allowed to use a generator in.
Ah, okay.
So, and they have people on the film commission that would wire in for you. It's
Well,
amazing.
that's in Camden as well, isn't it? In London.
But there's a, I don't know about that. There's a town in Victoria Park. Yeah.
Mm. We've had a couple of questions in, so I just hopefully we can get a couple in. So we've had a question that says, does the panel feel like there is adequate supply of clean power options available? Are there challenges to include this equipment on their projects? So it'd be good to hear if anyone's got any thoughts on that.
Here's my thought is sort of what I was thinking a bit earlier as well, is that there is a thing, I suppose, I don't know if this is quite answering the question, but there is sort of the sort of over-speccing of generators thing is, if you sort of know you're going to use LED lights on for most of your days, but you've got like a Jenny carrier that you're taking around with you, sometimes that generator you might only have two choices, say, of generators, like 100 kilowatt generator or similar, or then the 200 kilowatt, because that's might be what the lighting companies have. And if you know that on 1 or 2 days of your shoot, you're just going to take the same generator around with you, but on one of those days, you are going to need to plug in like over 100 kilowatts of light, then you might end up just taking a big generator around with you for the whole job because you don't want to cross-load things. Or there's reasons why you might overspec a generator, but I think trying to work that into your planning, which generator, if you do need a generator, even like what are you sort of using, what do you need? I think sometimes that can be another limitation where that, just the actual generators that are available through the lighting company you're with or through, whoever you're getting them from can sometimes be make it hard to not just be running a generator all the time. So I think, there's, again, more limitations, I suppose.
Thanks, Andy. And unfortunately, I've just checked the time and we're just about to finish, just as the questions are rolling in. But I just want to say thank you so much to our incredible panelists for just taking part in this conversation and helping to bring to light some of the things that we I guess are grappling with as we transition to greener energy. Thanks again to BFI Sustainable Screen Fund, supported by National Lottery, for making this happen. And we've got our closing slide up, and it will be great if you can check out the QR code that helps us. We'll give you a bit more information about Spark. But yeah, once again, thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you all for joining. Hopefully there's a way that we can collect some of these questions and share them out again, because I know I want to hear the answers to some of them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it's great to be
it feels like the very beginning of a conversation.
Maybe we'll chat back in a year, maybe every year until 2030, yeah?
That's good.
Brilliant.
See you there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.